Welcome back once again to Final Fantasy XIV. Today we're tackling the beast of 2.1 content. The Binding Coil of Bahamut, Turn 5. Put on your serious pants, this is gonna be a ride. Now, even after 2.2, they've been slowly nerfing this fight in the form of the echo buff that you get, as well as having better gear to go into this with. But it's still not a cakewalk. You're actually gifted with about 3 cutscenes through the process of getting to this fight, so be ready to skip them as you get to them. But this fight is hard. Despite the echo buff and better gear, if only because those help you with a lot of checks, but they don't let you ignore mechanics. And this fight is actually one of the most mechanically complex fights and mechanically demanding fights in the game. In that regard, I would actually say it's harder than any content aside from the Binding Coil of Bahamut Turns 6 through 9, which came in 2.2. Now, there are a couple different strategies that you can go into this fight with. But you will want at least one person with a pet, be it a scholar or a summoner. You will also want at least one paladin for stun, and you will want at least one mage, be it summoner or black mage, for limit break. This is also a very long fight, so a bard for Mage's Ballad is also very appreciated. Now, the more pets you have, the easier some phases of this get, but we'll address that when we get to it. We actually have 3 pets here, so our task is reasonably simple. You can also one-tank this and bring 5 DPS, which helps a great deal with some of the DPS checks. That, as well, I'll get to when we get to it. The fight itself is divided up into a total of 5 ridiculous phases, and each one of these phases is vastly different from any phase before it. Now, you'll notice Twintania is down there with a number of ads. Twintania and those ads are going to be the first phase. The first phase, not that ridiculously difficult. However, you will want to focus target Twintania. And please do it now so you don't have to worry about it later. We've also got some markings on the field there which you can use as a sort of guide to where we will need to be at different points. I would like to just clarify how absolutely mind-numbingly difficult this fight is. You can duty finder it now, but don't expect the duty finder group to be able to get past Conflags. And even going through the party finder, it will take you a long time before you find a group that can get a decent win. So regardless, even in the group we're in here, we died a few times. Okay, with that said, let's actually get this started proper. Now, what the main tank is going to be doing is grabbing Twintania herself and hauling her over to A. The off tank is going to be grabbing all 3 of the ads. I would highly suggest not attacking them outright right from the very beginning. Give the tanks a chance to actually get their poop together and get some hate. A bad pull right here at the beginning is a quick way to wipe the group. Let the off-tank go in first and grab everything. Then have the main tank go in and grab Twintania off the off-tank. It's your job to kill the ads first, and then once the ads are dead, go focus on Twintania. Now, of note, Twintania has 2 major attacks that the main tank is going to have to concern themselves with, which are Plummet and Death Sentence. Plummet is where you'll see Twintania simply slam into the ground for a fair amount of damage, and then Death Sentence, which will very well near one-shot even a tank. It's an insane amount of damage. The Scourges, on the other hand, are much simpler to deal with, but they do have a very annoying mechanic called Liquid Hell. As long as all three of them exist, as long as all three of them are alive, you're going to be dealing with a great deal of this. Which is, they'll target somebody randomly. It's not going to be the person they have hate on. Cast Liquid Hell on them, and they will poo down a large flaming circle on the ground. If you stand in this, you will take damage over time, and it hurts a fair bit, so please don't stand in it. With all three of them alive, you're going to be dodging around a lot of these, so please do focus one of them down, or you may very well kill somebody. And a death this early on in the fight is not a good sign. But once you've killed one of them, that's one less Liquid Hell you're going to have to deal with. They do fade away over time, so that's of course helpful. And then once you kill all three of them, it's time to run over and focus on Twintania herself. Now, Twintania has a lot of HP. This is going to be a very long fight, though it does cap out at 15 minutes. However, you'll notice I'm actually not using Fracture or Touch of Death, and the reason for that is simply because the TP cost for them is so high. I'm likely to run out of TP just in this first phase, or at least going into Phase 2. But once you've killed the 3 Scourges, there's not much left to Phase 1. All you have to do is whoop on Twintania until you knock her HP down to maybe 80%. Now, if you want to solo tank Phase 1, with all the Scourges and everything, it's very simple if Nightmarish on the tank. The one tank merely goes in and grabs everything, and you have to beat the Scourges off of the tank. I'm quite positive keeping him alive is no easy task. But you should have a 5th DPS to help kill the Scourges fairly quickly. As soon as you see part of the ring around her neck break off and fall on the ground below her, we have entered Phase 2. Now, this thing that has fallen on the ground forms a small black circle, and that is called a Neurolink. We've placed them in very strategic locations for very specific purposes. We want one right near A. Quick bit of information about the Neurolink: while you're standing inside of one, you take almost no damage. However, you are also healed for almost no health. For the time being, simply ignore them. We'll be getting back to them in Phases 3 and 4. Back to where we are, Phase 2, where Twintania continues to do the same thing she's been doing, which is giving the tank a very bad day. And she adds 2 new attacks to her repertoire: Fireball and Conflagration. Conflag. Now, the Fireball is why I mentioned previously you want at least one pet. You see, Twintania will turn around and hit someone randomly with Fireball. You'll see a large symbol over your head before it hits. When it hits in a small area around the target, so it can actually hit multiple people, and is necessary to hit multiple people. The more people it hits, the more it spreads the damage out about them. However, also, the more people it hits, it adds a buff to Twintania. I'm not exactly sure what the buff is, but I do know you don't want any more than 4 people to get hit by that, or you're going to have a bad day. So the goal is to get no more and no less than 4 people hit by a Fireball. She will never target the main tank, which leaves 7 of us, which is where the pet comes in. If you have only one pet, you can put the pet off to the side and divide the group up before the fight even begins. Make sure people know what group they're in. To have the pet and 3 people on one side and another 4 people on the other side. The pet, thankfully, does count as a target. Now, dividing the group up is one way of handling this. We're handling it in a slightly different way. Since we have 3 pets, we've simply put all of the pets on the left side of Twintania, and everyone else is on the right side of Twintania. Whoever gets targeted with Fireball runs to the left and stands next to the pets. Now that the first Fireball has gone off, we're going to move Twintania over to location B. The big reason we wait at location A until the first Fireball goes off is because otherwise Twintania could be moving and everybody could be spread out when the Fireball goes off, which is the last thing you want. But now that the Fireball has gone off, everybody is fairly organized, and you've got just a brief moment to run Twintania over to location B. Now, you need her on location B for a few reasons. One is prep for Phase 3, and the other is a different kind of prep for Phase 3. Now, not only the red triangle for fireballs, you will eventually see a blue circle over someone's head for the Conflags. Now, what the Conflag does, once it targets someone, that person needs to run directly under Twintania, dead center under Twintania. This way, it's completely unlikely that anyone else will be caught inside of it, and it's very easy for everyone to attack. Despite that it looks like a swirling vortex of fire, it can be attacked, and in fact needs to. If the Conflag is not destroyed fast enough, it will erupt, killing anyone inside of it. If you are caught in a Conflag, and this goes for the person targeted by it initially, you are bound in place and unable to move. Unable to attack, unable to do anything. You're simply waiting for them to break you out. Now, do not use cooldowns on this very first Conflag. Save them. Because, as you can see, someone was just targeted by Fireball. Now, if there is a Conflag up, the Fireball person needs not run over to the other group. They instead need to go into the Conflag. This will bind them in place and leave them unable to move. However, Twintania cannot target anyone inside of a Conflag, meaning the Fireball is completely avoided. Doing this also extends the life of that Conflag, so you've got even more time to beat it down. This is why I suggest not using cooldowns. It is important to kill it quickly, but save your cooldowns. Once the Conflag is beaten, everyone goes back to their respective positions and continues beating on Twintania. This will take a fair amount of time. This phase lasts until her HP is about 55%. We have another Fireball hitting someone on the left, so they ran off to the left, and immediately someone is targeted by another Conflag. Now, this Conflag will not have a Fireball spawn that you can run into the Conflag, which means the duration on this Conflag is going to be much shorter. This is the one that you use your cooldowns on, because this one needs to die very quickly. Person is saved, and we can go back about our business. And now, the pattern repeats. There will always be a Fireball, then a long Conflag alongside a Fireball, then a Fireball, then a short Conflag, then a Fireball, then a Conflag along with a Fireball, and so on and so forth. The easiest thing to remember is, if you feel like being more reactive than pattern-based, is simply, if you get the Fireball marker over your head and there's not a Conflag up, run to the other group. If there is a Conflag up, run into the Conflag. And then the Conflags themselves will be alternating between long and short Conflags. The first one will always be long. Now, do keep in mind, especially with the better gear coming out and the increased echo buff that you get for this fight, it is very easy to screw up the timing on these. Too much DPS can push the fireballs and the conflags out of sync, and you may have to resort to simply treating every conflag like a short conflag. That's effectively it for Phase 2. We just need to whittle Twintania down to 55% now. You would think this wouldn't be that difficult, and to be honest, it's not that ridiculously difficult. However, you do have to make very split-second decisions on things, and if you do hesitate a little bit, you may very well kill some people. And if too many people wipe in this fight, you're not going to make it. Now, Twintania is getting very, very near 55%. Now, what you want to do is, when you see Twintania's HP getting near 55%, if you think a conflag is going to be going up very soon, hold DPS. The last thing you want is to push Twintania into the next phase while a conflag is up. So if you think one's going to be coming very shortly and you can't burn her to 55% before that happens, hold DPS and wait for the conflag. If there is a conflag up, make sure not to touch Twintania until the conflag is down. The conflags themselves aren't the hardest part of this phase. Transitioning into the next phase is the hard part. When you see another piece of the ring around Twintania's neck break off, forming another neurolink on the ground, we've entered Phase 3, the Divebomb phase. Twintania flies away and completely disappears. Even if you have her focus targeted, the focus is gone. However, we should have been tanking Twintania near the marked B that you see there, which means just near the north-northeast corner of the map, there's a small dip right along the edge of the screen. As soon as you see the neurolink break off of Twintania, run for that hole. And get down as far as you can go, but right up against the edge of the arena. Now, I will explain, very importantly, that the edge of the arena is not a hard wall. It is a ring of fire. If you touch it, you will die. So when I say butt right up against it, don't actually touch it, but get as close as you can. Make sure you're as low in that hole as you can go. And after a brief moment, you will see a green circle appear over someone's head. With everyone's name tags and HP bars and everything, notice that I've actually disabled everyone's HP bars. It's actually kind of difficult to see that mark over their head. This is another reason that you want to focus target, since the focus target disappears when Twintania is out flying away. As soon as you see the focus target appear again, you know this is coming. And as soon as you see it, get out of the hole. Run up to one side, and Twintania will dive bomb the area you were just in. Now, the difference in height between being in the dip and up on the surface is what lets this technique work. So if you're not far enough down in the hole when you get targeted, everyone else may get hit by it. And I'll add, the dive bomb doesn't just do damage, it knocks you around. When the edge of the arena kills you on contact, even if you could survive the dive bomb itself, it's still very likely you're going to die. Being even slightly out of position for these dive bombs is a very quick way to kill the rest of your party. Run back in the hole and get back in position, and after a brief moment, you will see another one come. So get out of the way and run back in again. There will be a total of 3 of these. There's the third. And get back in the hole once again. And now, 3 snakes will spawn. 2 Hygeias will spawn, and 1 much larger snake. This is a DPS check phase. However, there's a little more to it than that. You see, when a Hygeia is killed, it explodes, leaving a debuff on everyone nearby that is a durability down debuff, meaning you take much more damage. However, this debuff will also be placed on the other snakes. And our rather large snake friend over there takes so much damage to kill that it's very unlikely you'll be able to kill him without utilizing these debuffs. So what you do here is simply DPS the 2 Hygeias down to 50%. No more than that. Just get them down to 50%, and then turn and focus on the big one. You won't actually kill the big one in this time, but every little bit of damage helps. You'll want to stay in the pit because the Divebombs will be coming back. After an amount of time, I'm not sure the exact duration. I usually have enough time to get the 2 Hygeias down to about 50%, then target the large one and beat on it for just a moment before I have to start thinking about it. This is another reason that you want to use the focus target on Twintania, however. With everyone beating on these snakes, it's going to be almost impossible to see the graphic over your head. Notice also that not only have I disabled HP bars, but I've also disabled all of the graphics that come off of everyone's various attacks. It's going to be difficult enough to see here. But the focus target, once again, lets you see when Twintania comes back. Make sure you're down in that pit as far as you can go, just as before. And as soon as you see that focus target, get out of the pit and run back in. Get out of the pit and run back in. Now, at some point during this whole mess, the off-tank will actually be taking the 2 Hygeias and hauling them off to the opposite corner of the arena, while the main snake will be staying here for us to beat on. If you're doing this with a 1-tank setup, the main tank will merely be leaving at the very end along with everyone else. This is done because 2 more Hygeias will be spawning on the opposite corner of the arena after 3 Divebombs. So the off-tank is going over to grab them, and you see now we're all grouping up on C. With all the 4 Hygeias grouped up, we want to haul all of them right up next to the big snake and get away from them. This is actually very important. Remember what I said before, when the Hygeias are killed, they explode, putting a debuff on you. I have died many times because I had that debuff on me, so get away from them. The mage, black mage summoner that you were sure to bring along, I'm sure, will be using the area limit break on all of the snakes. This will hit all 5 of them and should kill the two Hygeias that you had worn down previously. The remaining 2 Hygeias also now have the debuff on them, so they should die much quicker. So I run in briefly to beat on one, but as soon as I think they're going to be dying very, very quickly, I get away from them once again. And now, with only Asclepius left, burn him. every cooldown, everything you have. Kill this snake as fast as possible. If you don't kill the snake fast enough, you're probably going to be killed almost immediately in the next phase. You see everyone now is running off to the Neurolinks to prep for the next phase. I'm leaving Asclepius for the ranged DPS to be able to deal the finishing blows so I can get in position. There are 2 Neurolinks on the ground. The tank is in the one on A. Only the main tank, not even the off tank. Only the main tank is in A. Everyone else is in B. Now, if you happen to have a warrior and a paladin, much like we do, the warrior is going to be the main tank. And after a brief moment, you'll see Twintania reappear back in the arena, followed very shortly with a very powerful raid-wide attack. That attack will do a lot of damage, even if you are standing in the Neurolink. If you happen to have a couple stacks of the debuff on you from the snakes, it will kill you even if you are in the Neurolink. Which is why it's so important to dodge. But after that attack triggers Phase 4. We're still just barely over halfway done with this fight. Now, Phase 4 has the main tank grabbing Twintania and hauling her to the very center of the arena. The main tank is going to have to be dealing with everything he's been dealing with up until now, and not really anything new. Plummet and death sentence, for the most part. The trouble from this phase comes from what everyone else has to deal with, which is the Dread Knights and the Twisters. And this is another reason why you absolutely need to have Twintania focus targeted. Because even if you don't happen to have her targeted, you need to know what she's casting. If you see her casting Twister, move. Don't sprint, and don't overlap where anyone else is. Make sure you're staying in your own little area, don't cross your own path, don't cross anyone else's path, and cover as little ground as you can, i.e. don't sprint halfway across the arena. Because after she finishes casting, after the cast bar hits full, she will summon a small twister below a good number of random people's feet, including the main tank. This may not necessarily be everybody, but it'll be probably 4 to 6 of the people. If you touch one of these twisters that was spawned, it will explode and kill you. So once again, that is as soon as Twister is done being cast, after a brief, it will summon it where you are standing. After a brief delay granted, so as long as you're on the move, you'll be out of the way. And by brief delay, I mean maybe 1 second. See, there was no Twister under my feet, so I'm now good to go beat on Twintania. However, almost immediately after that, we saw a Dread Knight spawn. And this is the other mechanic that we have to deal with. When the Dread Knights spawn, you need to get as far away from them as possible. Especially if you're melee. If you are a mage or a ranged, you should be far enough away that it's not that big a deal to be far enough away from them. Melee either need to be aware of when they're going to spawn, or super on the ball. So as soon as you see them in the enemy list, you hightail it away from them. And the reason for that is the Dread Knight will randomly target one person, not the main tank, thank goodness. Will randomly target one person. That person will be bound in place and unable to move. You'll see a red cage-like energy surrounding them. The Dread Knight will slowly make his way towards that target. If he reaches that target, they will explode and die. This is also why the warrior is the one that's main tanking. The paladin needs to stun lock the Dread Knight. I shoulder tackle in as well, since that's a brief stun as well. They will build up a stun resistance, I'm sure, but as long as you can kill them as fast as possible, it shouldn't be that big a deal. If the stuns are lacking, though, or if people aren't really on the ball and getting to them, or if you've got a couple of people dead, you may not be able to kill them in time. All the while you're dealing with this, keep an eye on Twintania's cast bar, because she will still be casting Twister. Sometimes she'll cast Twister while you're fighting a Dread Knight. Just be prepared at any given time to dodge Twister, and be prepared at any given time for a Dread Knight to spawn. And we just barely killed that one. The mages in back, you can either run, everyone can do this really, you can either all agree to say run clockwise or counterclockwise, or just run a small tight circle around where you are, which is actually what I've been doing. It takes up very little space and it ensures that I'm not going to get hit by my own Twister. But that's it for Phase 4. As long as you're really on the ball and paying attention to if Twister's going off, or if a Dread Knight is spawned, or killing the Dread Knight as fast as possible, getting back on Twintania, if you're paying attention to all of that, this phase should go over well. But again, keep in mind that many aspects of this fight are very, very easy to have go downhill. If someone dies, you don't get enough DPS on the Dread Knight in time, then someone else dies. It's a snowball. Now, if you want to solo tank this phase, it's going to be up to the DPS to keep the Dread Knight stunned. I've seen the main tank offer to stun him. The main tank, we had a paladin, offer to stun lock the Dread Knight as well, but to be honest, I think he's doing enough. And with 5 DPS, you should be able to just wreck that Dread Knight. Most DPS should have a stun of some form, though, so try to keep him stunned and burn him down quickly. Now, at round about 25%, the final piece of Twintania's collar will break off, creating a third and final neurolink on the ground. From this point on, the main tank is to not move at all. Clean up any Dread Knights and clean them up quickly, because you're going to have a couple new mechanics to deal with very shortly. The off tank needs to run over and get in that neurolink that just appeared below Twintania. Neither the off tank or the main tank will move at all for the rest of the fight. And that's because of one of 2 new attacks Twintania gains in the final phase: Hatch. Hatch causes a large green orb to form below Twintania. This will target a random person, you'll see a graphic around the person, and it will chase them down. It will not fade away in time, it will not go away. It will only go away when it finds them and kills them. If it hits them, it will kill them. However, standing in a Neurolink will negate the vast majority of this damage. So, the intention, of course, is to have whoever is targeted by this to very quickly run over and stand in a Neurolink. The A or B Neurolink that are out and about should be fine. Once the hatch hits them, a small amount of healing will be needed to bring them back up, and everything should be fine. However, this is still a great deal of running and panicking and people dodging. So, the accepted strategy is simply to have the off-tank stand in the Neurolink that spawned directly under Twintania. The hatch spawns directly on top of them as long as Twintania is never moved. Since the hatch will explode on whoever it hits first, whether it's the person it's targeting or not, it will merely hit the off-tank immediately and kill them. And go away. Keeping in mind that since the off-tank is standing in the Neurolink, he's not going to be taking much in the way of healing, but it should be fairly easy to keep him alive. And this keeps the hatches off everybody else's backs. Now, in a single tank setup, I have had the main tank offer to eat the hatches himself, which I would assume would mean as soon as you see the hatch spawning, the main tank runs in, stands in the Neurolink and gets hit by it, and then runs back out. Personally, I do not like the idea of the main tank moving. When I did this with a solo tank, I'm the one who jumped into the Neurolink and ate the hatches. You'll want a melee to do it. The more defense they've got, the better. You're going to be taking so little damage from it, though, that it's generally not that big a deal. And if you do get to volunteer to stand inside of the Neurolink, all you have to do is stand there and wail. Now, I did mention one of two techniques that Twintania gains in this phase. The other is her own special version of Liquid Hell. She will target someone randomly, and this does include the main tank and off tank, and hit them with Liquid Hell. The same thing the Scourges use back in Phase 1. However, she will rapid-fire Liquid Hell, setting about 4 or 5 of them out on the field. Now, if a mage is in back, the mage will want to simply run in a circle around the outside of the arena, leaving the Liquid Hells sitting about. Don't sprint, just keep running. If a melee gets hit by it, you'll want to back away a little bit from Twintania and start running in a circle inside the mages on the far outside, but not so far in that you're overlapping the tanks. If either of the tanks gets hit by Liquid Hell, they stand there and they eat it. This is a fairly simple phase. At this point, I think it's mostly taking advantage of the fact that the party should be kind of on their last legs. They should be frazzled. They should probably be half dead by the time you get to this point. But with the off-tank eating the hatches and everyone spacing the Liquid Hells out evenly enough, this isn't that bad a phase. The only troublesome part of the phase comes from if Twintania targets either the main tank or the off-tank with a Liquid Hell while they're already standing in their own Liquid Hell, at which point the off-tank needs to still stand there and eat it. The main tank will want to try to rotate Twintania around just enough that they're not standing in 2 stacks of Liquid Hell. But this is the end of the fight. There is a 15-minute hard enrage on this fight, by the way. So if you don't kill Twintania fast enough, she will kill you. That isn't so hard a barrier to meet, though. We killed her in probably 12 minutes. But once you get to this phase, just wail. If you've got a cooldown, use it, just go all out. She's not going anywhere, she's not moving. And with that, you will have defeated the best that 2.1 has to offer. However, a lot more has been added in 2.2. For your reward, you will gain 2 pieces of item level 90 equipment, specifically an item level 90 piece of equipment and an item level 95 weapon. This is the only place to get the item level 95 weapon from Binding Coil. It's a hard fight, and it will take you a significant amount of time to get your final win. But this has been the Binding Coil of Bahamut, Turn 5. Until next time, everyone, a lot of content's been added in 2.2, and though I think I perhaps should have covered many of the easier parts of 2.2 before tackling Phase 5 of the Binding Coil, we're going to be taking a look at 2.2 content next time.